Right, what's going on, guys? Harry here, and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today, I'm joined by CaniSports, fellow Sorare and FIFA YouTuber. Check out all his stuff. Links will be in the description. But today, we're going to be talking about how to enjoy Sorare as a beginner. Yeah, I wanted to make this video just because I think a lot of content that I make, everyone kind of makes, and everything's talked about in the Sorare community is profit this, profit that. So yeah, I just wanted to make something that's a bit less money driven, I guess, and just kind of focus on the the enjoyment aspect. But yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm enjoying myself despite no rewards. So this is gonna be the perfect video.
Yeah, just a few questions to start me off. So I just wanted to know, well, I saw on your channel that you started Sorare on the 5th of December 2021. So just over 3 months ago now. What kind of sparked your interest in sort of joining?
I think initially it was just Nep talking about it multiple times. Nepenthes, he was talking about it like months ago, way before I actually joined, maybe like 3 months before that. He was talking about it, and we were like playing games with another YouTuber together, and we were like, "Yeah, just Nep, shut up, dude. It's okay. We get it. You enjoy it." and then it kind of moved on to like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is actually interesting." And he was right. I wish I joined earlier. So yeah, that was the spark, like the fact that there was a game out there where you could have ownership of certain players and you can like kind of follow their games and be more engaged with the matches. That was the main thing that really interested me, because I personally have just been watching Liverpool games or Bayern if they play in the European Championships. So for me, it was just to be able to enjoy more football and being more connected to other matches and other leagues as well, rather than just watching that one team. Because back in the day, I used to watch so much football and that kind of stopped due to like the work with YouTube and everything. So not enough time for that. But lately, I have been able to find the time because I kind of rescheduled a lot of things for me. And this game came at a perfect time. So that was kind of the main reason as to why I wanted to join in, because you know, that ownership part and the competitiveness and just watching the games and seeing your players play. Every touch they have, you're like, please pass it to your teammate. So, or get an assist or take a shot or something like that. Like it's been very enjoyable. Has definitely upped my enjoyment of games a lot.
Bro, it's really funny you just said that. I was watching FC Dallas Saturday night, right? And I'm celebrating interceptions and stuff. And my friend, like I'm streaming the game, and my roommate's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
What? I'm like, no, I have him on Sorare. Like, I need him to make tackles.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, really. But you know what? Like, one thing I've really noticed, like, I'm like hyper analyzing games, like whilst watching them, if that makes sense. Rather than like normally they're just playing the ball out wide, and you don't like. It's really weird. But now I'm like, well, that's a long pass. Well, that's an entry to the box. And it's kind of crazy how like our brains are kind of like adapting to the matrix, basically, is what's happening, right?
Definitely.
I think that's really cool.
I think for me, like it even got to the point of I was watching Amaya yesterday. He was like one of my freshest purchases for the under 23 summer period. And I saw the guy when he had his first 70 rating. So I was like, okay, let me take a look into this guy. Seems like to have really low scores before, like mostly subbed in and stuff. And then I Googled a few things about him, and it said like he was the top draft pick, and then somehow things didn't work out. So I was even more interested at that point. So yesterday I got to watch the first full game. Before that, I kind of watched the highlights and everything. And during the game, I was constantly looking at him because he's a CDM, and I like CDMs that constantly scan things around them so that they are always aware of what's happening. So every time his team was moving forward, or every time the opponents were kind of pushing towards them, he was looking around and just scanning constantly. And I was like, yep, that's my guy. Because I don't like CDMs that just react, but people that actually like scan everything like a Kimmich, where you know what's going on around you at all times. So it gets to that point where I'm like, oh, he looked behind him. I'm like, yes, this guy's good. He knows that there's someone behind him.
That's so funny. I remember when I was a kid, Frank Lampard, when he was like at his prime, I remember he came out and said something like, he checks his shoulder like 6 times before receiving. It was like a stupid number, basically, to where I was like, wow, like I need to do this, you know, because I was a centre mid at the time. We're like on the opposite side now, we're watching people do it. And it's crazy. But what things did you find like difficult at the start? Like when you first sort of, you know, opened your account, like what was like, oh, wow, this is a bit daunting, or this is a bit hard to understand?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I really struggle with, and it's clear to see, is that I initially didn't know if I should be trusting the platform. The more and more I got the trust, the more I wanted to invest. So my initial investments, which were meant for a small budget, then had to turn into a bigger budget investment type thing. And at that point, those players were not good enough anymore. So I had to move on to bigger investments, and it just kept on going that way. So I'm like constantly getting rid of the ones that I initially brought in with the fresh ones. So there's a lot of loss that I made in terms of like trades and such, but I still feel comfortable with it, because at the end of the day, it's just disposable income. It's not something where I'm like, oh, this is all the money I have in the bank, I'm putting it in. No one should do that. I highly recommend not doing it, because otherwise you're not going to be enjoying the games. Because if a guy just misses a big chance, it's going to ruin your week, because you have put so much into it, and it's not just disposable income. So for me, it went from not being able to trust a platform, going in with a small budget, to then moving on to bigger budget and realizing, hey, I actually want to take part in this more than I initially thought. And just that process of going from that one starting point to where I am now has been quite painful in terms of how much I've lost in value. But at this moment in time, I feel a little bit more confident. And I think it's extremely important to go in with a plan. If you don't have a plan and you don't write things down, which players you're going to play where before you buy them, and even looking into schedules, seeing if they actually mix up. If you buy MLS players, are they gonna play at the same time as these Asian players that you have? Like all those things I didn't know about at the start. So yeah, I feel like it's very important to have a plan when you get into it.
For you, I guess the transition was a lot easier than like maybe just a non-FIFA player, if that makes sense. Because like it kind of correlates in that sense, stats and pace, and
especially
like
for the youngsters. Yeah,
100%. It's just like if you've like I came from a you know, an alternative gambling background in Football Index, which is a whole other story. But you know, that was a similar thing where like there was a matrix, and so like when I first came on, I was quite lucky. I was buying players that I kind of knew did well in the fantasy world. You know, like my first purchase was like a Lorenzo Pellegrini. Like I just knew, because he scored really well for Roma, you know, when I was on that other platform. I think he probably might do the same here. It was just like I had something to go off. I had like a reference point. But I think if you don't, it can be like really daunting, like knowing like what's a 70 and what's a decisive and what's an AA. Like, and this is no exaggeration, I honestly didn't understand the matrix up until about 5 months ago, maybe 6 months into my journey. And when I mean understand, I mean like fully understand it. Like what's a double, what's a triple, like just all those little nuances. And I think like looking back now, if someone was in front of me now and said, Harry, like, you know, I really want to join Sorare, I've heard about it, what do I do? I would literally play that casual league to the point where like, you know, inside out how these players are scoring their points. And then, like you said, you have to, before you deposit any type of money, you have to have a plan. I think that's just number one, right?
Yeah, that's something that I really struggle with, because I like constantly want to buy under 23 players, because that's just what I enjoy the most. And it's like what I base my content off in career mode, mainly just youngsters, players 23 and under. And kind of that mindset has kind of screwed me over, because I kept investing into the youngster and not realizing, like right now, I think I have 22 rares in my squad. And how many of them are? 12 of them are under 23s. So it doesn't really make sense. I now had to like spread them out to other divisions and all that. Because of my enjoyment of these is just so much higher than when I would get like an older player. I'm at a point now where I just realized, like, hey man, just stop with the age hate. You know, just go ahead and bring in performers rather than like going that route. But yeah, that's another thing that I personally really felt like I only realized months into the game as well. Like I've seen a couple of stats that some people on Twitter posted, where like players 28 to 32 perform best on SO5 and stuff like that. And you can just see it, experience, especially like possession when it comes to midfield players or even defenders. They just make so much less mistakes when you have those older, more experienced players. While with under 23s, you'll have possession lost a million times, and it just shows.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like, I find this as well. Like I have so many leftovers because my gallery is just under 23 based. After I've done my under 23 pro, under 23 rare pro, under 23 super rare, I'll have like, I don't know, 5 to 10 extras. And if I do have a playing goalie, I'll throw him in all-star pro or all-star rare pro. But the problem is I'm up against some monsters who are, like you said, 28 and plus, who are just going to completely kill me. Sasinias, all these Kimmiches, like I've got no chance really. I'm just throwing them in there because it's extra utility. I might as well. If I have them spare, why not? And I need
it's a training squad that could win something.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's probably the best way to look at it. It's a training squad that could win something on its off day. But yeah, like I know going into it, my expectations are really low, and I think that's one thing. Yeah, if you're playing under 23 players elsewhere, just be prepared basically, because you're going to be up against
unless you're playing Ajax players. It's going to be tough.
Very true. So I just wanted to ask you, in terms of like, you've spoken about it a little bit, but in terms of like, you know, what do you really enjoy about Sorare? Like, give me like 3 things just stand out that's not to do with, you know, profit.
I think the main thing for me has been, first of all, discovering players that I didn't know of, because I didn't watch MLS, I didn't watch Asia at all, I didn't watch Challenger Europe games, like zero interest for them. I think discovering new youngsters that I didn't really necessarily hear of because on FIFA they don't have high potentials, those have been like the standouts for me. Like that's something that I really enjoyed. And like the last video I posted, I think it was like a Sprint to Glory USA. So that's basically youngsters from the USA, wonder kids that I build up to be like 90 plus rated players. And I included Pablo Ruiz and Amaya, even though they don't actually have that high of potential. They have like 80 maybe. But thankfully on this FIFA, you can get them past it. So discovering those types of players, not only on Sorare, but then also taking them on FIFA and getting them to high ratings and enjoying them there. That's been something that I've really enjoyed. And people have been talking about it in my comments as well, like your football knowledge is going up a lot. So it's very nice. So discovering players that I didn't hear of is the number one thing that I really enjoy. Second of all, just watching the games, like being able to watch the games and just have some involvement in it, have something that you kind of root for in every single game has been big for me, because as I said before, I only really Liverpool and Bayern Munich games. Those are the really only ones where I kind of root for something to happen. But yeah, like now I support Porto, I support Seoul, I support Ajax, Feyenoord, AC Milan, all these teams. And it's just been enjoyable to watch them. And even though like sometimes with the Marseille players that I have, initially I bought like that Marseille stack. Thanks, Quinny. All jokes aside, it's obviously not his fault. I looked into their stats and I was like, yeah, this team is just looking great. And as soon as I bought them, they stopped getting clean sheets. Anyways, even that side of things where players concede in a late minutes and lose all their points and I drop out of rewards, in that moment, I'm absolutely heated. But on the next day, I think, man, that was fun. You know, just being able to have something in that match that I really rooted for and be emotionally involved. So that's the second thing I would say, definitely. And the third thing that I really enjoy is just spending time scouting players, like finding players, not just necessarily youngsters, like on the first point I mentioned, like Amaya and Ruiz, but also finding older players that I never heard of. Like right now, I'm looking at Vancouver's center back Blackman, who's like 25, 26 years old, and he's been getting insane points lately. And I'm like, wow, let me watch some games. Let's see how this guy is actually doing. I saw that he wasn't doing too well at Los Angeles, moved over to Vancouver. All of a sudden, he's like the main performer at the back. So just scouting for hours on Sorare data has just been so much fun. Like I've been able to spend so much spare time actually doing something that could be beneficial rather than just being sat here and I don't know, watching Netflix or something like that. So yeah, it feels like I'm actually working towards something at all times. So that's another thing that I really enjoy.
100%. Yeah, that scouting thing's huge. I remember like when I first joined back in January last year, I remember like obviously the platform was new. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I would only buy cards. It was really weird. It was a time where like nobody was selling on the secondary market. Like everyone was keeping their good cards. So you had to just buy from the auction. It was really strange. And like, I remember looking back and a few of my first purchases were like players like Cade Cowell, which hasn't really done much this season in the MLS, but last season at the start, he had an unbelievable start for San
Yeah.
Jose Earthquakes. All I did was literally go on the auction, look at players that I didn't have a clue of their names, and just like you said, go on YouTube, go into
Yeah.
SofaScore, which is my favorite app. I love all the stats that they give,
Yeah.
but there's other apps, FootMob, there's loads. Just discovering new players in new leagues, like so underrated in terms of like a pastime thing, you know, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really,
It
really
really is.
enjoyable.
It's
And like you
fun.
said,
Like,
it
yeah.
is really fun. And then there is the potential of that player maybe winning you something eventually. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the golden nugget. Of course, I'm not saying that like, you know, you should join Sorare and never think of like what monetary gains there could be, but ultimately there is an enjoyment factor that's really up there, I think, in terms of like if you had to balance it out. I think like for me it's like I think it sways more to the enjoyment. Like you said, that
Yeah.
adrenaline rush you get when you're, you know, in top 15 or whatever it is, like that is like unrivaled, genuine.
Yeah.
Like you can't really
100%.
you can't buy that, but technically you can.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I know what you mean. Like for me, it was the Jesus Ferreira. Like I bought him 3 bad performances, nothing special. And then this last game, he obviously got a hat trick and an assist, and I got like 100 points. But I had to go to sleep before the game started. So I woke up. First thing I do every day, especially during weekends, I turn on my phone. I go to Sorare Data, and I'm like, "Whoa, 100! I'm wide awake." All of a sudden, I'm wide awake, and I'm like, "Yes, this is amazing." So the only thing that I guess people could compare it to when they're like people that play FIFA and such is like getting a massive pack pull. But it's like every time your player scores, it's like Ronaldo came out of your pack. Every time your player gets an assist, it's like Messi came out of the pack. So that adrenaline rush that you have when your players do well, that enjoyment that I get has been worth so much to me. And I'm fully aware, like so far, I haven't really won anything, but I just enjoy it so much. And I just keep yielding ETH. Like right now, I'm like 0.4 ETH I've brought in terms of like yielding, in terms of rewards and the ETH thresholds. I'm totally fine with it. I'm fully aware I invested a lot more into the platform and I should technically be doing better with how much I have invested. But at the same time, the enjoyment that I'm getting out of it gives me that patience to wait until I actually start getting those rewards in and that profit side of things comes in. But the enjoyment levels are so high that the profit side of things doesn't really seem that important to me at this stage. So I would totally agree with you. The enjoyment side of this and being able to talk with your friends in a Discord call, like me and Nep, we spend like hours on his stream, just constantly going through players. And yeah, it's just so much more enjoyable than anything I've really done with FIFA, especially online FIFA.
Yeah, I guess the main thing, the best comparison or the best difference is those players stay with you forever, Tech. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
if Ferreira doesn't score for 3 games, he doesn't go anywhere. He's still playing, and like we
yeah,
said, you're patient. Like that's one big thing. I think I know this is a completely different story, but patience. Like you said, if Ferreira doesn't score for 3 games, a lot of impatient people sell him there, or
yeah,
go to sell him, or go to trade
yeah,
him. But you kind of have to see the bigger picture sometimes and go, hang on a minute, this kid's playing number 9 at 21 years old. Like he had X amount of goals last season, X amount of assists. Chances are he's going to get a good game in the next, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And it
yeah,
might look, it'd be easy to say that just because he scored 3 goals, but like the point stands is like the impatience / patience thing is a massive one on Sorare. And I can relate to that with like my football index days where like people would sell off players after 1 game and like that type of mentality. And I speak to people now. Like I've got a good friend on Sorare, and like he's been on there longer than me, like 2 years, and he still struggles with patience. So it's not something that like you know you can practice overnight. It's like a slow burner, I think.
yeah.
My last question would be, like, as somebody brand new to the platform, you know, how will they enjoy Sorare, like despite their budget, if that makes sense?
I honestly think you can really enjoy this game in the casual common leagues as well. Like obviously looking at like all the content creators and stuff, you'll see them play with super rares and really expensive limiteds and be like, yeah, I can't afford that. It's not something I can enjoy. But I genuinely believe putting together a good common squad and kind of rooting for them and watching the games can be just as much fun. It's not necessarily all about like spending the money and going in big and all that stuff. Like play the comments for a while, play it for 2-3 months, especially right now before the European season ends, so that you can utilize those players and the American MLS ones that you might have in your team as well, and see how it goes. And at that point, the European players, Challenger Europe and all those ones are probably going to be quite cheap because right now the prices are crashing. So you can like save up for a couple of months and like decide, do I actually want to jump into this with money, or do I just want to play it casually? Because there's no detriment to playing it casually. It's just fun. And I would definitely expect like people to play this with friends and have those bragging rights and being like, yeah, my casual team got 350, you only got 320 and all that. So I'm a better manager. So yeah, I definitely would suggest people just play casually. Don't go in with money that you can't afford to lose. That's the most important thing when it comes to this thing in crypto or generally in this game as well. Never ever go in with anything that you can't lose, because if you do, it's going to be so painful, man. I highly recommend to anyone, never ever invest more than you can afford to. It's the number one thing I would say to everyone, but just enjoy it, because the enjoyment that you get out of this platform is huge. And the community, people constantly like in Discords talking to each other, maybe not in the Sorare general Discord, let's be honest. It has been a cesspool for negativity lately, to be honest.
Sure.
But I personally genuinely think like going into the smaller Discords, getting to know people, sharing knowledge with people that know like the best Turkish players. This guy knows everything about the Turkish league. This guy knows everything about the K League, and just sharing that knowledge and then going in and getting those players and being like, wow, hold on, I'm getting rewards all of a sudden because I've gotten the knowledge off of these people. So that's been one thing that I've really enjoyed as well. Like the community aspect is huge.
Like you said, the Discord is a bit hit or miss right now. Obviously, you've got a lot of passionate, long-term users in there that are not happy with certain things, and that's fine. Like,
yeah, I get their issues. I totally 100%. Understand.
There's a certain way to go about it, I believe, but ultimately, there is issues, and that's we can't be blind to those things. There's going to be hiccups along the road. It's not a perfect
platform. It's far from it. Let's be honest. It's still building up. It's still so young. And if you look at the company like EA, who's making billions and realizing how little time they spend to fix things in their game, you'd be like, yeah, Sorare is a ton better than that, because I am like an EA game changer. I am in their program and I message them about issues within the game that are like nearly game breaking. I'm playing a Champions League final against Martial playing at left back. A CDM, Kimmich, plays striker. I'm like, what is going on here? How do you mess up the lineup so big? And they haven't fixed it in like 2-3 months. And it gets to a point where like, all right, man, what's the point in contacting you if you're not going to fix the main thing, like one of the biggest issues in a game that takes away enjoyment? I don't want to be up against a striker at center back. This is nonsense. Like, I get the problems with Sorare. It is far from perfect, for sure. There are so many things that still need to be improved, but the concept of it, the idea of it, is what I support. I'm not supporting the people that set up the platform. I'm supporting the idea of it, and I am in there with good faith that they are going to be doing the right things. And if they don't, obviously the community will show their distrust by getting out of the platform and them losing all of that money. And hence, because of that, they have to listen to the community more and just go ahead and do the right thing moving forward.
100%. Like, I don't think it should be like an off-putting thing if you're a beginner, if that makes sense. Like, you've got to understand that these companies do make mistakes. There's going to be hiccups along the way. But like you said, if the idea clicks in your head, that's what if you can relate to your ownership and these cards are yours forever technically, and utility and like if you can wrap your head around all that and see how that is a great idea, then I think you can kind of just put the team on a back burner, what I'm saying, and just not focus on that too much. And if you're a beginner, you haven't got time to worry. Like, let's be honest, you don't have time to worry about that, really. I think it's more of like getting involved with the scouting and and really understanding the game matrix wise. But ultimately, I think like there's a really nice Twitter community as well, if I'm completely honest. Like a lot less toxic right now than the Discord sometimes. Well, especially just the general Discord, but the rest seem fine. Like I pop into like you were saying on the Bundesliga like tab, or the the K League tab, or the J League, and just have a little chat in there and ask a few questions. And I think that's where you know, I'm becoming pals with like people
Yeah,
I never have met before, you know,
exactly.
that's the one thing that like the last platform that I was really engaged with was, it was basically just in the UK. So you didn't
Mhm.
really have that like worldwide engagement that
Yeah,
So Rare
yeah,
have the capability to have. And it's just like, that's
yeah,
powerful, man. Like I've come out and met people in America just through our love of football slash So Rare. And it's
yeah.
just like, you can't buy that. Like
No.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I personally think that that's huge. Like the thing that you mentioned, like the individual tabs for the certain leagues, those people have always been great to me as well. Like when I ask a question in there, people have been very kind to inform me about things that I just don't know of, especially when it comes to the Asian side of things, because obviously with translation and the language issues, it's always nice to have those people who can help you out. And that just shows like this game is completely global. And if they make the right moves going forward. I wonder what they're going to be announcing. March isn't that long anymore. They were supposed to give us an update, so I'm very excited to see what they're going to do. I've been seeing a few changes on the platform with like the L15 now being displayed on the players lately. I wonder what they're going to do there. Rewards hopefully will be sorted. You guys, I've seen the longer term managers complain about that ever since I came in. At the beginning, I was like, what's the issue?
Yeah.
You can win cards that are worth thousands of euros. What's your problem?
Yeah.
But then obviously looking more into it, I totally agree with many of you guys. So yeah, I genuinely think Sorare has a lot to do moving forward. And I really hope that they do listen to the community and don't just focus on the licensing side of things and just wanting to bring in more money, more revenue. I think this game has a very good opportunity to grow an insanely huge global community of managers that then interact with each other and spend hours every day just being on this site, or mostly So Rare data, obviously. But that's also in their interest. So I really hope they make the right moves moving forward.
In terms of like how they can grow and how they have grown, I think like word of mouth marketing is like what's really taken them to the, you know, the over 120,000 users, whatever we're at now. Like existing users really telling their friends and their friends telling their friends, you know, about how good the platform is. But I
Yeah.
think existing users will stop doing that or be more reluctant to do that if these issues don't get corrected, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think right now it's thriving off of the idea that Sorare represents, which is why I got involved through NEP telling me and invested as much as I have. In terms of advertisement so far, I have seen nothing when it comes to Sorare. Like nowhere. Apart from La Liga on the sides, I believe they show it there. But I don't know if that really has such a big impact. I'm not fully aware on how stuff like that works, like statistics, like if you show it during the game, how many people sign up during that match. But like, I personally really hope that they move forward on the marketing side as well, because obviously they have been getting a lot of investments, and I hope they don't waste it all just on licensing, because the game itself, as it is now, the players that are available are already good, right? And they are bringing in clubs one by one. I think they brought in Spezia, and now they brought in Dinamo Zagreb, which is another really good one to have. And I really hope they invest a little bit more into the marketing side of things as well, because yeah, no one really knows of this unless you have someone that actually plays it as one of your friends telling you.
Yeah.
So that's the way I got into it. And I'd be very surprised if we find anyone that found this by themselves.
I think, like you said, like us content creators are doing the marketing for them technically, you know,
Yeah.
in that sense. And but yeah, hopefully they do sort of ramp up that side of things, like you said, with their own sort of internal content and push it that way. But yeah, for me, yeah, the word of mouth is just vital, and they just really need to get all these little corrections right at the right time, and yeah, just not under deliver in that sense, you know, because
Yeah.
unfortunately people's expectations are quite high. And is that a bad thing? I
Yeah.
don't know, but you know, there is that, and people do get frustrated, and sometimes unjustified, sometimes justified. But
I personally think like the expectations are somewhat justified because of the amount of money that has been pouring into the platform lately with the growth that has come in, especially. You'd expect things to move further and further, even if it's like small steps, like the licensing for Spezia and Zagreb that I just mentioned. even if it's like small steps like those, I still really hope that we can see those improvements every few months. And one thing I really wish for is just more communication, because that's something that I absolutely hated about EA, where there would be no communication, no clear sign of interest from them in their community at times. And that's something that I really hope Sorare does differently. It's so important to communicate, even if it's a bad thing. Let people know what's going on and be available to be talked to. And yeah, currently I see Dan being the only one that kind of takes all the heat, and he tries to be the one to come out there and like let people know what's going on. So I really hope that there's going to be more people employed to bring in more communication with the community. You can't just have one guy.
No.
It's just not good enough.
It's not sustainable, is it, long term?
Yeah.
If they are aiming for 1 million plus users or whatever it is, there's no way that form of communication works, especially in like a Discord. You know what I'm saying? Like, not everyone is going to be in the Discord for a start. I know they do put things on Twitter and stuff, but yeah, like you said, there needs to be a team dedicated, like I imagine, you know, to those situations. And
yeah, I've known like the community managers from EA. I met them, I hung out with them, and we talked about like how come you guys are not communicating as much as you should and stuff. And it's mostly them being restricted by the company, by investors, not wanting certain things to be run in certain ways. So I really hope Sora is in a position of power where they can decide themselves, we want to do it this way and we're going to do it this way. So ideally, if they have that power, I would hope to see more communication in the future. And I know how straining this can be for community managers. Talked with them a bunch of times about this, and it just seems like most people that have now moved away from EA, they have gone to 2K, NBA, Zaro, and I don't know what the other guy's name was. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Corey. Those guys have moved over to 2K, and it just seems like they're so much happier with how things are going, because they had to deal with such a massive amount of income of hate and just constant bombarding of messages towards them in a spot where they had no power to kind of deal with it. So I really hope Sorare is aware of that, and they know that one guy alone can't do this. It's not good enough. They need to have community managers for each region, ideally. One for the German community, one for the UK, for the English-speaking ones, one from the Asia market, one for the South American ones. You need to set up properly so that you can kind of spread the workload on all these people, and they can then go ahead and constantly communicate. And yeah, I think that would be a big step as well if they could go ahead and do that. I see they're hiring a lot of people though, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the 200 or so they want to hire, you'd like to think they can dedicate a team of 5 to 7 people, you know, in, like you said, and spread across regions and stuff eventually, if the community does explode in the way that they hope for. Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on to the channel, man. My first Sorare collab, technically. Yeah. Well, I mean, on my channel, yeah, I've done John's podcast, or we've both done.
I've seen you on Quinny's live streams.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, we have done a few live streams, me and Quinny, actually, but first official video goes to CaniSports.
Hey.
I do really appreciate you popping on, man. I think it's been pretty insightful. I hope people get something from it, you know, find a bit of value in there. But yeah, I really do appreciate your time.